Good. Good evening, everybody. We're now recording. We're meeting with Dana Martin Davis, who is an inspirational collector who lives in North Carolina. And Dana is the one guest that has appeared, I feel like calling it a show, in this course more than any other. Dana, good evening. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi. It's great to have you with us again.
Thank you.
So you're preparing to go to New York tomorrow, right? To participate in the Armory Show, or to be a witness and collect at the Armory Show and other events that are happening in New York, right?
Right. A series of things, regardless of what the weather is. It's going to be taking in the commercial art fairs, seeing a couple of gallery shows that are very important. Not just staying in Manhattan, but going to Bushwick. I've got to check in with a friend, Stephanie Theodore, and see what's happening over at her gallery. So just a lot of things, and not necessarily the greatest weather predicted, but that's not going to stop me, I hope.
How long have you been immersed in the art world?
Well, you know, immersed is a hard thing because you know that we generally don't jump into the deep end.
Right.
We start at the shore and we wade out. And I've always been fascinated with art. I've always made art, and I didn't begin collecting until about 1997. So it's been a constant since then. And let me tell you that in preparation for talking today, I wanted to talk with you all about making. And my points were going to be, you know, making your work in the process, but also making your connections and making the most of every opportunity. And as always, we start out with a little bit of an agenda, and then we want to leave space for questions, and Paul interjects whatever, and we go off on every kind of tangent. So whatever anybody wants to ask with Paul's permission or unmuting or whatever, you know, the floor is open, and this is the time to ask. I'm also very accessible, so I can answer questions via Facebook, or, you know, I always like to look at work. I've met so many people through Paul. I've met so many people through these courses at different times, and I've run into them. So I've run into them in New York. I've run into them in Miami. I've run into them in Chicago, and you know, you just never know when you're running into somebody that you first know via an initial introduction.
Oh, am I supposed to say something here?
You want to just let me start talking? Can I get a feel for, are the people here painters, sculptors? Who are the people?
I think you've got both of those, and you've got some people. I haven't thought about that. I know you've got a fair number of painters. I know you've got some sculptors. I'm not so sure about video per se, but there might be some ceramics. Probably a photographer too. I'm not positive.
All right.
Is that enough, Dana? We could ask specifically.
Well, I'm interested if there's any particular area, and you know, I think that some of the things, and I can just talk to you about some of the things that have been swirling in the last few weeks, and some of the questions that have come up in the last few weeks, because I've had a couple of meetings. One was with a young photographer curator who is getting ready. He's completing a body of work, and he's looking for the venue and planning a show right now. Another meeting that was really interesting to me just happened on Saturday, and it was arranged by an architect I know, and the architect invited me to you know, have a discussion with a woman who is an art writer and a man who is a photographer, but is also a photography curator who is forming a show right now. And we just had a roundtable discussion, and there's a theme running through all of those conversations, and the theme seems to be, how do we make it happen? Or how do we make it happen more? Or how do we look for new venues or ways to collaborate, to work? How do we get our, or how do we sometimes go beyond whatever our comfort zone is or whatever we're accustomed to doing? How do we take it to a different place? How do we do something more creative? How do we engage more people? And I went into the meeting with all of these different artists and all these different art people, having had one thing on my mind that was extremely visual. I ran into a man who is very entrepreneurial and was in the process of forming and setting up his own business. And on the last day I ran into him, he was actually doing some cleaning out of his own business. And instead of being dressed in coat, tie, whatever, he was wearing a T-shirt, and the T-shirt said, "Make your own luck." I think so many times, particularly in the art world, people are concerned about how did this person get to this, or how did this other person get to be so famous or so exposed. And there seems to be a great deal of simple happenstance or manifest destiny, or some kind of thing, some sort of driving, overarching thing. But on this particular day, when I was seeing this man set up and clean out and really do the drudge work of setting up a new business, I saw that although his shirt said "Make your own luck," he was doing really hard manual labor. And he was working after hours in his own business as his own employee. And it struck me that the way he was working is very much the way I'm assuming most of you work. Because art, unless it's made in collaboration, art is going to be made in a relatively solitary condition. But you're going to need exposure, or you're going to need a community around you to launch you to a different place, unless you're the sort of person who's completely private and you're completely glad to make your work all of your life and nobody sees it. And I'm assuming, since you all have signed up for this, you're looking for different ways to maximize your contacts, and you're looking for different ways to explore the possibility of your work either changing, taking on a different character or aspect, and you're also looking for new venues or looking for introductions that new people can give you. And you're finding it within a virtual community. I don't know how many of you knew each other before, but I've noticed in this virtual community that there are a lot of people that have a tremendous sense of connection with each other and a sense of community, even though they first meet in a virtual sense. So I wanted us to talk about options and ways to make our own luck, and then also making the most of every opportunity.
I think that sounds really good. I think it's really true, Dana, what you're saying. Where do you want to go from here?
Well, I've spoken about, and I hate to talk about any one particular person and talk about them too much, but I've spoken about a friend of mine who's an artist, Mattia Biaggi, and I said, Mattia, I first ran across his work in an art fair in New York.
Can you spell that for us?
It's Mattia Biaggi. And so, I first bought his work a very long time ago, say 2005 or so. And he did a museum project at my invitation in about 2007, and that led to a museum show. We couldn't have planned it. It's just that it all got connected.
Dana, can you talk about that for a moment? What capacity did you facilitate a museum connection liaison? How did this come to pass?
I think I may have told this story once before, and in one of these webinars. So, you know, I don't want to bore anybody, but the reality is, it goes back to the first thing I said about make your work. Because first of all, you've got to have your work, your body of work. You can't really step out and make connections and hand out, you know, business cards or have planes flying over or take ads out in art form unless you've done the work. So we're going to assume that you've got something that's a reasonably distinctive, a reasonably interesting body of work. And the thing I found, sorry, I just came in and it's very cold outside. The thing I found interesting about Mattia is that when he came at my invitation to come to a museum gala, we had walked down, we were in Charlotte at that point. We had all, a small group of us, walked down the street, seen some different arts venues, and we got into the conversation because he was collected by a lot of really famous people or influential people, but he hadn't really done museum exhibits at that point. And he was asking me, how do you get your work in a museum? I told him that there are multiple ways you can attempt that, but you can't necessarily make that happen because there have to be curators that are interested in forming a program around. Well, you've got to fit into a program that they already have instituted and planned. And we were having this step-by-step discussion, and then lo and behold, he was in a conversation the very next day at brunch at the museum with a curator. The curator brought up the title of something that was coming forward as far as an exhibit, and Mattia simply pulled up his phone and showed images of some work he's done. I didn't want to go back and tell that story from, say, 2005, 2007, 2011, except to say his giant sculptural tar teddy bear was just in a window at Bergdorf Goodman, because during Fashion Week, Bergdorf Goodman decided they wanted to do, I think it was 10 artists, but they wanted to highlight the work of 10 artists, and chose him and put his work in one of the windows at Bergdorf Goodman, and immediately that sort of image was tweeted all over the world, written up in Italian Vogue, that sort of exposure that is extremely hard to figure out how to make. But the key thing I keep saying about him is he was essentially ready. His work was ready. His body of work was ready. He was ready to talk about it. He looked for opportunities to engage, and all of these things just began to happen. So, it's simply an example. It's very much like the discussion that happened on Saturday. I was there, the woman who's the art writer was there, the man who's the photographer, curator was there, but the person that instituted it was the person who knew all three of us. And he's an architect that I last saw when he was finishing up his architecture degree in school at UNCC. And an artist from Chicago, Theaster Gates, had done some sort of collaborative project with the architecture students. They had built a project. And this architect, Josh Shope, had participated in the building of that along with the interaction with Theaster Gates. They later disassembled it from the gallery, and then they later came and they assembled it at my house. But, I hadn't really thought too much more about him. And then when I saw him this past Saturday, he was the person who had issued the invitation and gotten the people together and said, come along and let's talk about some things. And I asked him, well, what are you doing? Here he's a brand new architecture graduate and has a fairly new degree. What are you doing? Well, he's working for an architecture firm. So I was reasonably impressed. Oh, you graduated from college reasonably recently, and you also have a position in a firm for which you had a degree. You know, we all know that's relatively rare as far as people in brand new college degrees actually being able to go to work in their field. And I suggested to him that the key reason he had that job was exactly the reason that we were all sitting there talking, because he had a sense of how important connectivity is, and he had a sense of reaching out and wanting to connect. And I find that fascinating. So, you know, I've got a really maxed out calendar coming up this week, because Wednesday's going to be the opening of the Armory Show, and Thursday's going to be the opening of Volta, and Friday's going to be Fountain, and in between there's going to be all this time to go to Brooklyn or go up to the Upper East Side to the ADAA show. There's some very interesting other things that I have to see. You know, I really want to see a sculptural installation that right now is in a huge structure inside of St. John the Divine that's on the Upper West Side. That is, it's a construction by a Chinese artist, a very large construction. But the most important thing is, in between seeing all these things, taking a specially guided tour of the Whitney Biennial, in between all of these things, I'm going to be seeing as many people as possible and making connections with people. And what you'll find is that the people that you meet as you're going along the way end up running into over and over and over. And you end up connecting in the same way. And that's why I've always, when Paul would say things about the art world, I would say, well, it's really just a village, because you keep tripping over the same people day in, day out. Just this afternoon, I suggested to Paul painter who was really excellent as far as a speaker in this whole series, because I think he's very engaged. I think he's doing a lot in his community. And he's a man named Danny Simmons, and I first knew him as a painter. And then the next thing you know, the next time I met him, he had finished a novel, and his novel was written up in the New York Times. And then beyond that, Danny does a lot of community involvement and does all types of things within his community. And beyond that, he also collects art. So I thought all of those things would be really interesting, and he would bring a lot of perspective and a lot of wisdom and experience to one of these things that Paul opens up and lets people share from different perspectives. And I'm not saying that these things are immediately related, but they're not unrelated. As soon as I connected Paul with Danny Simmons and suggested that they work together at some point, within about an hour, I got a call, and I was asked to join the board of an international arts organization. And I'm not saying that those two things are immediate. I certainly didn't make a connection with Paul and Danny thinking, oh, there's going to be something that falls out of the sky that's interesting to me. But you know, amazingly enough, that just happened, and that just happened this afternoon. And it's an organization that I'm very respectful of, and that I really enjoy their programming. I respect what they do. So it's a really good ask, and it's a really good match. And it's a small example of how I didn't even have to leave my own house in those hours to connect Paul with Danny, and then get the connection from the director of the International Sculpture Center. So those things just happen to me naturally because I'm inclined toward it. I like connections. And I think it's always important to be mindful of where can you introduce someone, or what can you do for this other person. I don't do it from a sense that it's going to bring me anything, but surprisingly, I say that art has opened up the boundaries and parameters of my life much more than anything I've ever done corporately, much more than anything I've ever done professionally, and really more than what's happened in other more finite or closed circle parts of my social interaction. So I point to art as being a living, active village where we come and go and we interact and we meet people. But before you all sign off, I also want to learn if there's some degree of curiosity or discouragement about what's happening within the larger market today, because just this week I heard of this ridiculous website. It used to be called SellYouLater, SellYouLater.com. The name is changing, and it's some kind of supposed art market. Some of us are trying to decide if this is an absolute scam or is it some sort of prank, because the people behind it are completely anonymous at this point, and they're using very anonymous, almost funny acronyms for the names. But the question remains, these people have set up a website, and essentially it puts artists and fairly well-known contemporary artists into the categories of buy now, under $10,000, buy now, under $100,000, sell now, and they even have a category called purgatory. I mean, it's just, it seems like it would have the language, of a real prankster, or maybe some, maybe it's some group of disaffected, disenfranchised, disgruntled people. I have no idea. But it's almost as if you'd taken everything that's happening with the art world and then connected it to some sort of metric, the way that people would make stock projections. And I find that sort of thing extremely soulless. I've talked about time and time again that we need to not be unconscious of the value, because it's terribly important that living artists have a roof over their head and groceries and electricity and art supplies. Those things are extremely important. But at the same time, if people become so focused on the market, if this thing takes off, if this sort of idea takes off, then people will be buying and selling things almost like trading cards at a higher end of the market. And I find that extremely cold. I find it very brutal and soulless. And I'm not really sure what to make of it. I'm not sure to make of where it's coming right now. So it will be interesting to run into a lot of people who are in the dealing end of art and see what anybody thinks about this, or see if it's made any difference. Another thing that was making a lot of noise several months ago that I've heard practically nothing about was there was just a big brouhaha about Restoration Hardware opening up a venue where they were going to sell artists, and people could walk into this large building in Chelsea and buy art very much the same way they buy furniture or other accessories from a regular Restoration Hardware, and they were going to have an art venue. The odd thing is, although I've heard about some dealers or some art advisors who are going to check that out, I really haven't heard any big news about that, and I haven't heard any from the ground whether anybody thinks this is a good idea or a bad idea. And I say, when it comes to your work and making your work, the best thing you can do is to continue to be as productive as you can within your own true means of expression, and continue to work and explore the change and the growth and the possibility of that, and then develop your own community of support. your colleagues, the peers that are working and making work. You know, yes, it's great to meet people who are wonderful and farther along in their careers, but don't forget about people that look to you and think of you and really need someone in a mentoring position. So I would say to all of you, at whatever position, because I don't know in advance how experienced you are. I don't know in advance how much of a market share you have or hope to have. But I want to remind us all that we all have people that we're looking toward, and then we all have people that we could also bring along. And there are a lot of ways. I think we're going to have to get much more creative about being cooperative, about space sharing, about studio sharing, about looking within your communities and seeing who within your community or what arts organization within your community could be supportive enough and encouraging enough to allow discounted or shared art space among artists, that people would have different ways to work. I wanted to tell you also about, because this was a very unusual purchase for me, because I tend to go large. I tend to like larger things. Scale is something that speaks to me. But a couple of weeks ago, I picked up 3 bags of art, paid for in advance. I did not know what was in them. I didn't know what it was going to be. And it's a program called CSA. And you've all heard of, you know, community shared agriculture, right? This was community shared art. And I've already bought my second share, but the first share I was picking up all at once because I hadn't been in town to pick it up as they came along. It's a very small buy-in, but a group of artists, you know, decided together that this would be a good way to show their work, to get their work out. There were only 50 people who were going to be able to subscribe to this, and I heard later on that half of those people had never bought art before at all. And I think that's a great new market share idea. And these pieces that people made were relatively small. They were simply introductions. You know, instead of giving somebody the whole wedding cake, you just give a slice. Instead of giving somebody a great big painting, someone, I think in terms of, I'll just take Sharon Dowell's name in vain, but Sharon does larger scale paintings. She does a lot of commercial installations. But she did a painting that was nothing more than 4 by 6, and that was her inclusion with the share. And all of these people had done work that included their contact information, their business cards, how to get in touch with them. And I've heard that some sales of larger work have really come out of this. And this happened completely outside of the normal gallery venue. And I think that's an interesting possibility to think about coming together. If there's an arts organization or if there's some sort of arts event within your community, you could advertise in advance. You're selling shares of art, let people buy in, they pay up front, and then the artists up front have the money to make the projects or make the small things, and you're essentially just making a taste of what you do or giving an introduction of what you do and putting it out there to people who could potentially buy something on a larger scale or become your ongoing patron or your ongoing collector. And that was for me. It was so different, and it was so interesting to pick all this stuff up at the same time that I immediately bought another share. And it's not anything that's expensive. It's so cheap that anybody would do it, even if they're not interested in you know, collecting art on an ongoing basis, or even if they would have sticker shock. They might have some degree of sticker shock if your particular painting was, you know, $27,000. But if you can do some small thing or do a print or do some introduction, it might reduce the sticker shock and it might broaden the exposure and might bring a different market to bear. And I thought that was a great thing. That was done in Charlotte under the auspices of the Arts and Sciences Council, and the artists who participated, just really did an excellent job at not only producing their work but packaging their work and essentially packaging themselves. And it was unique to me. I hadn't seen that done before, and it was surprising, and it was a lot of fun. And I think, yeah.
I want to shift gears slightly and ask you a question, because you're leaving town tomorrow, and you're jumping in hip waders into several art villages. What role do you see yourself? I mean, I hear you talking about a lot of roles. One is, a collector. Two is a facilitator. And three is kind of like a matchmaker.
Right.
There are others. And
I think matchmaker, that sounds like fun. Okay, now go ahead. What else do you think?
Well, I mean, you buy a lot of art and it ends up at the Mint Museum more quickly than most collectors who buy art have their collection or pieces from the collection go to a museum. I'm just trying, you wear a lot of beautiful hats, some of them with a lobster in the art world. So, are they all equal, and or do you go, are you compelled to acquire a work of art this week?
I'm never compelled to do anything. But if I'm compelled, but if I'm compelled to do something at the moment, at the time,
out of the way.
Nobody. Exactly. The thing that you say, Paul, is exactly how I see myself. I really am not hedging on that at all. I'm not hedging on that at all, because I think to be an art lover and to be a facilitator, in some ways trumps the collector thing. If I would hardly ever go into a situation and say, oh, I'm an art collector. What does that mean? I buy a bunch of stuff and bring it home and shove it up under my bed. Or I put it at my office. Or embarrassingly, I have things in the trunk of my car right now. That is really embarrassing. I have a few things. You know how people leave things at the dry cleaner? I just remembered I left things at a framer. And I need to, when I get back in town, it's like note to self, when I get back in town, I'm going to check in with a framer, because there were some framers that were working together, and when they had a split of location, I need to determine who took custody of my art and go track it down and figure out where it is. When you have more things than what you can live with, you can have a warehouse and you can just keep warehousing things. I could say, well, you know what? What if the plane doesn't crash tomorrow? What if I had a grandmother who lived to be 92. What if I lived to be 92? Maybe I should keep everything and keep it for myself. And then when I die at 92, whoever has this monumental task, can send it out. I do it extremely differently, because every piece of art I buy is an immediate gift to one of my children. They simply allow me to care for it. I think I've also told this story here before, and I don't want to be boring, but...
Wait a minute. I think you being boring would be really fascinating. I think you should try, but, let's not worry about it.
Well, it's an idea that I'm not glomming onto it and holding onto it. I'm extremely sensitive and very cognizant of the reality that emerging artists, to put another line on the CV, when Vivian Beer's chair goes to the Metal Museum in Memphis. And I like Vivian Beer. I've got Vivian Beer's work downstairs in my house. You know, I like Vivian. She and I presented at she and I presented on a panel at MIT together, and I love Vivian Beer's irreverent nature. I love what she does with steel. I love what she does with bright cherry red auto paint on these big steel sculptures. But to put Vivian's work in the permanent collection of the Metals Museum, which is the only dedicated metals museum in the country, stuff like that is important to me because it's another line on her CV, and I'm conscious of that. So work for me is not simply a commodity. I'm extremely conscious of what it does in terms of showing, and that's why I always loan work. My policy is as long as the artist is living, we always loan, so museums can borrow things. I understand the economic realities of today, and I understand that museums are challenged, and if they can show things that this is borrowed, that is borrowed, this fits in a show, I let something. I've got a sculpture sitting in the next room, and that sculpture has been to New York, it's been to Nashville, it's been to Raleigh, it's been to a museum in Charlotte, it even went to Alabama, it went to some other place that I'm not remembering right now, but, you know, some of these things really receive a little bit of wear and tear if they're handled that much, but at the same time, how wonderful is it that something gets written up so much, is in so many different museum programs, is seen by so many different people, all these different school children come in and see it. And I had the most bizarre thing, I don't know if I've told you this story or not, but I now have a son-in-law, and this young man who married my daughter last year, one of the first times he came into my house, he pointed to something, he said, I saw that. I saw that, and he started describing the museum exhibit, and he had met an object that is sitting in my house before he met me. I think that's interesting.
That's awesome.
And it's a different level. It's a different level of connectivity. It's a different hook. It's a different means of introduction. People go around handing out business cards and saying hello and introducing themselves, but art is an amazing means of, you know, conducting more interesting conversation. And I find the most interesting conversations happen for me in my life in and around art. And that's one of the key reasons I gravitate toward it. Beyond, I enjoy living with it. I enjoy making it. I enjoy artist and art conversations. All of those things work together. But I really do recognize that beyond making work, showing work, selling it, you know, it's not just about having your mom stick it on the refrigerator with a magnet. Having it get into a museum show bumps something up a notch. And if it's something that the curator likes, if it's something that delights the curator, and it's something that we were looking for this is fantastic, this is exactly what we were looking for, everybody's happy all the way around. And it facilitates everything all the way around. What it means for me economically, and if there's something that I give away, I mean something that I really do give away into a permanent collection, I do consult with my children, because essentially I'm giving away something that already belongs to them. Because as each piece comes in, this is yours, this is yours, this belongs to you, and it's all decided. And essentially, I'm the acting trustee of things that essentially, right now, even as I'm living, belong to them. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm not asking you if it makes sense. I mean, you understand what I'm saying. They let me be the curator and the caretaker, and it belongs to them, and then I just get to be the air traffic controller deciding where it goes. And then if I decide, you know, this would really be good, or it'd be good at this time. The only reason I gave the sculpture away last year was we were getting ready to go to a series of art fairs, and I knew that people were going to be shopping, and I wanted to sort of set the tone of giving something away that I really, really love, that I love living with, before, you know, before the artist passes away, before I pass away, before it's achieved possibly even the top of its value. But just go ahead and give it away. And it maximizes the exposure of the work. And, you know, Paul gets really ramped up sometimes on hyperbole, and he makes me sound bigger than I am. I don't really give away as much as I've heard a talk before, and it made it sound like I just throw the doors open and give everybody everything. And I really don't, because it is important for me. It is important for me on every single plane of my living space. It is important for me to see original work. You know, it's how I choose to live. It's what I want to see, and everything that's around me amps up my life and informs my life, and I want to live with it. So I'm not going to give away to the bare walls. You know.
We try. If you guys have some questions, go raise your hands. I got one more for Dana, and then I'll come to you guys. So raise your hands if you have questions. I feel like in the 3 or so years you and I have known each other, Dana, that your involvement in the art world has increased, that you are involved more often and deeper. Is that just because I've gotten to know you better, or is there truth in that?
Well, you know, I listened to you say that, and you said something about something has changed. I said today when I got that invitation to take that board position, something in my life very much changed. Last year in New Zealand, standing on that land at Gibbs Farm, I made a very conscious, and you have to think I was surrounded by massive things, massive Richard Serra, you know, giant Bernard Benet, these things. But, you know, I decided I want to do more. And clearly, it's impossible. Where are you? I can't see you anymore.
That's okay. I'm hanging up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, people, this is my most, other than the land I'm living on right now, this is my favorite piece of land in the world. And you have to understand how amazing it is that the Anish Kapoor, or all of these things, there are sheep and other things wandering around. I'm obsessed with this piece of land, and I'm obsessed with a vision that's this big that puts these massive things here. And rather than be disappointed that I could not come back to Charlotte and cause everybody to want to have a huge sculpture park, when they really wanted a baseball park instead, which I think is so last millennium. But you know, I didn't get the final say so. I think that what Chicago has with Millennium Park is what every community should aspire to having. And so, you know, because I didn't get to jump up and down about that, and people said, oh, well, there's Romare-Bearden Park. We just opened Romare-Bearden Park. Sure, I know we did. I mean, I did the steel on that, not I, but our company did the steel on that structure there. And that's going to be one of the last arts, you know, functioning places that we're on a different place. That's not even the right place now.
Okay, good.
That you called up. But, you know, when I saw land this massive and vision this, I want to enlarge my vision. But, you know, I don't think that my vision is going to be, oh, well, our community has to hop on and have a sculpture park, and we have to have our own Richard Serra when everybody wants baseball. Maybe the vision is going to be very much like the meeting I had with the group of artists this past week. Maybe my vision is going to be sharing and incubating ideas and facilitating more art ideas and community involvement in other communities. I have more freedom in my life. I have freedom to travel. Possibly there are communities that need to hear the reality that if you make art a focal point, people will come and people will show up and money will follow and things will happen and people will have more fun and people will have more excitement in their lives. And I'm looking for opportunities to do that. So as far as bigger, the weird thing about me, I don't differentiate because sometimes the smallest meeting brings about the biggest possibility. So in my particular life, I don't necessarily define in advance, oh, this is going to be a very big encounter and this is a small, inconsequential. Potentially, every interaction we have is just absolutely full of possibilities. So what questions do we have?
We have one from Susan. Go ahead, Susan.
Hi, Dana.
Ma'am, oh, there she is. Hi, Susan.
How are you?
I'm well.
So inspired by what you've been saying and how you support artists. And you actually answered a lot of my questions in the last statement you made. But wondering, with all your promotions for artists, how successful have you been in inspiring people within your particular community to go out and collect art, to promote art, to promote commissions for public art? Have people within your group listen to you and start to follow on board with your inspirations for supporting artists?
Well, I have to say, first of all, I don't work within a really tight group. If you want to talk about the group that I'm most enthusiastic about, was year before last when a group of us went from the Met Museum to be in Miami during the time of Art Basel. And I was really fascinated and energized that a younger group of people than I am, who are, who later, but possibly no less passionate. And these were young people that I found really engaged, really intelligent, very sophisticated, very informed, and doing a lot of their own stuff. I mean, I thought they were fantastic. And I laughed and I said, I kind of feel like the den mother of this group, because there was so much going on. But so many of these people were going to an art fair for the first time. And, I had done so many multiple things. I with forum and format. And, when you've done something 8 or 10 times, it's very different. But you watch somebody doing it for the first time and you watch them get excited, and that's really exciting. That's really exciting. So I hope there's going to be a great deal of, because I think of the collectives that I look to in my community who are older than I am, and they've been wonderful. They've been supportive. They've given so much of themselves, so much of their money, so much in terms of their collections. They've given so much. And then I look at a younger group that I think have great comments because they seem to be so very well informed. And they're so curious. They're so very curious that when they come to something that they don't know, they look it up, they ask about it, they Google it. But I think they have tremendous engagement and involvement in the world. I really do. I think they're very, very sharp. I think they're extremely sharp. And I think they're very aware about making connections and where they saw this and where they saw that. I mean, I've just seen a really high level of sophistication among young collectors that's really encouraging to me.
Thank you, Dana. Cruz, go ahead.
Hello. This is Bruce from Denver, and I'm actually coming to New York on Wednesday for other things.
Oh.
And I have time Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and I wondered where would be the most likely place that I could run into you and buy you a beverage.
Oh goodness. What day did you say?
I have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and possibly Tuesday.
Okay.
Pretty much any time.
Okay, I'm leaving on Sunday. There is a let's see. I think the best thing would be connect with me via Facebook or something and send me a Facebook message, and I can say,
I should have probably said, I probably should have said, I have done all that, and just look for it when you're looking through things. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Bruce. Monica. Go ahead, Monica.
I'm in Connecticut, originally from Chicago. I actually have a question about the art share. It sounds really interesting. I'm a member of Soho 20, which is a feminist cooperative gallery in artist-run space in Chelsea, and this sounds like a really interesting idea for us to possibly pursue. We've done kind of flat file things, small sales before, but how were the shareholders invited into the into that system?
The CSA project.
Yeah.
I really don't know, because I'm coming from the direction of just being a subscriber. I think they, first of all,
well, how did you find it to subscribe to?
Well, it was done in conjunction. It was done in conjunction with their website. So they must have sent out emails. They must have sent out emails to their contacts.
I see. What was the name of the group again?
Well, it's in Charlotte. It was under the umbrella of the Arts and Sciences Council. I'm sorry, my screen won't work. It was under the Arts and Sciences Council, and then the program was called CSA. And it was so cheap. It was a $500 share, and for a $500 share, you get 9 pieces at 3 different things. Oh, the component I forgot, because I was someplace, I was out of the country, wherever I was. I missed all the get-togethers. They had 3, just like, you come to pick up your vegetables or whatever in a typical CSA share. They had 3 pickup points. And it might be at XYZ Brewery, it might be at Sunflower Bakery or whatever, but between the hours of 6 and 8, you could come together, have a cup of coffee, pick up your share. So you see there's a synergistic community part, and there was a chance to come together that was built into the handing out of the shares that I missed out on because I traveled so much and I just checked in. So when I checked in, I had missed the 3 contact opportunities to get the stuff handed to me, and just got it all at once. So that's something that you could possibly share. Let's say if you have an open gallery night, or if you have a typical Thursday night or a typical Friday night that's an open gallery night, you could start talking about this. And, just like you do, ask the community agriculture people, how do you do it? Because usually the way shares are sold in organic farms, because we've had them before, we've had them for, for years, usually it's just sort of a sign-up And if you've got people coming into your shared gallery space, you know, you take your usual sign-up list, but then you also leave it out for the general public and just float the idea, you know, we're going to do this. If you'd be interested, sign here and give me your contact information. And let's say you want to start smaller. Let's say you don't want to do 50 shares. Let's say you just want to see how it goes and you only want to do 10 shares or something, you know. You don't want to do that much or have it be that labor intensive. Because essentially you had to get 9 artists who were each willing to do 50 things. Okay? So it's a whole lot of making. And also, somebody tell Bruce, I certainly was not blowing him off in terms of dates or times or whatever, but when I'm thinking about ideas, calendar does not exist. I'm one of those people that lives in the great eternal now, and I'm so present, I don't even know what day of the week it is once I get started talking. Okay? So
I love the eternal now.
Great eternal now. And I'm so accessible, and I'm so willing to talk with anybody if I run into you or, you know, meet you at an art fair or whatever. But, you know, I don't necessarily know right now what I'm doing on what days. Any other questions?
Sherry, go ahead.
Well, hi, Dana. It's nice to meet you.
Hi,
well,
Sherry.
This isn't really a question, but I was just going to say, I love hearing that, you know, connections are not about like forcing relationships and me constantly running around and introducing myself, which is really anxiety, you know, causing for me. And so, you know, do I hear you're saying like the idea that just when I do what I love and I create and help others, that it's sort of like energy that comes back around and stuff? And
I'm going to say yes and no, because in this world now, you do have to do something. You know, I may, you know, any one of you may have the talent to have outdistanced anybody who got an Oscar last night. But if you only do Hamlet's soliloquy in your closet, nobody's going to know how fabulous you are. If you happen to be a person who's more introspective, who doesn't thrive on a lot of connection and a lot of introduction, what you need to maximize are the people in your life who do that sort of thing. And you get your people who are on your team who believe in what you do in terms of the quality of your work, what your vision is, what you're doing, people that already collect your work. You know, I've given private, it's almost like a salon night. It's like a private exposure that people can come to my house and hear an artist talk, and if not see work, because they can see maybe examples of the work in my house, but also see slides of the work. So I've had museum groups come visit. And, you know, you might think in terms of, well, maybe I don't like to go up to people one by one. Hey, let me show you a great painting. It sounds like you're trying to sell somebody a fake Rolex watch or something. You know,
yeah.
It doesn't fit everybody. But you could contact arts groups or contact, you know, whether it's some social club or some sort of affinity group or whatever, and say, you know, I like to, because sometimes it's easier to talk to a group than it is to have an individual conversation and try to put a pitch on one person. And there might be some affinity groups within your community that you could say, you know, I'm free to do an art talk at the library at a certain time with people. I mean, you just never know what kind of exposure makes something click. Okay. And everybody's community is different, but I do think we all have to work towards some degree of exposure until you get to the point in life that you're so inundated that you've got more invitations than you can possibly accept. You still need to work on some exposure, I think.
I think you're right, Dana. I was going to stick with yes, but, you know, your answer is better than mine. I appreciate it. You know, we've kind of run out of time, and we still have a few more people I want to hear. I hope they have interesting things to say. Let's take at least 2 more. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. Hi, Dana, first.
Hello.
This is really fascinating. What is your criteria for, you know, when you pick a work of art to collect or to add to collection? What is your criteria? What is it that you are looking for? People have asked that before, and it's just sort of, okay, let me make this analogy.
What is that fascinating you? You know?
What?
What is it that fascinates you about a work of art? What is it that attracts you?
Okay. It's, for me, it's immediate, and this is only me. I'm not clinical. I work solely on visceral reactions. Now, I've made very good choices. I've made very good choices in that sometimes I've chosen emerging work, and then the next time it's like, oh, lo and behold, so-and-so that you just bought last week, that person's in the Whitney Biennial this week, you know? These things happen. But, you know, it's like, you ever met somebody who said, I only like men who were tall and dark-haired and thus and so, and the next time you see them, they're absolutely married to somebody who's blonde and blue-eyed? Chemistry happens. I don't like to define. I used to say, well, I collect paintings. Because I know more about painting, I collect paintings. But then lo and behold, I collect a whole lot of sculpture, because guess what? Sculpture looks good in front of painting. You know what? This whole room this room is installed with, let me pick this up, if I can keep a battery. I don't know if you can see anything or not. I don't know what you can see. But let's see. You know, I can walk past paintings, but it's like, okay.
Wait a minute. What's that behind you?
Well, that's one of my paintings. I did that.
That's nice.
I did that. Okay, but this, you know, the thing is, you need, I can't make this work. You need sculpture. You need sculpture. You can't have a room of all paintings. And then lo and behold, if you say, oh, I only collect paintings or sculpture, look at this situation. You see this? Right. You know? And it's got a crazy cord that falls down on the floor and plugs in. And that's by Greeley Myatt. Greeley works out of Memphis. Greeley Myatt is really a thing in his part of the country. But he does these, some of the work he does are these cobbled together. So, I mean, you see these, you know, you see big sculptural things. You don't just see paintings. Everybody seeing that? Yes. Okay. You know, what happens is you need other things. It's like when you have work. Are you still seeing things? Because I can't see anything.
Yeah, kind of. We see parts.
Kind of. Yeah, it's just it's not that great. It's a collection, though. What you're collecting is and I love this. This is fabulous. That's Herb Jackson. That's one of Herb Jackson's Veronica's Veils. I love Herb Jackson. But you know, you need different textures, and you know, lo and behold, you think you're on the hunt for something, and the next thing you know, what you've bought is something that you know very little to nothing about, and you own video art. You know, I've only bought 5 pieces. Excuse me. But I think I've lost my voice. I told Paul I was taking a decongestant, and I think I'm losing my voice.
Uh-oh. Another question, Dan, or should we wrap it up?
If somebody's got one.
I've got people, but I don't want to kill an art maven just for the webinar. All right, well, let's see if we can make the questions and the answers short and let Dana go live. Anissa, go ahead. Hi, Anissa, go ahead.
I'm sort of new in the art world. I've been making art my whole life, but I'm in that phase now where I'm ready to make it more of a public thing and share it and gain exposure. And I was wondering what your opinion was on basically like, what's a good size body of work to sort of develop before I start to seek exposure? Not size of the work itself, but what constitutes when I'm ready to go out?
Well, I think in terms of, and again, this is not my area of expertise. That would be a better question to say Ed Winkleman or somebody who's a dealer. But think in terms of the next time you go see an exhibit, ask yourself, based on the size, this particular exhibit I'm looking at, am I looking at 18 to 24 pieces of art? What am I looking at? You know, and what's your scale relative to how many pieces it takes to fill a gallery? Are you looking to put a few pieces that are representative in a show? Chances are your prospective dealer would like to see as much of a cohesive, consistent body of work as possible. You know, you can't just do 10 paintings and one of them is fabulous and you show that one fabulous painting. I mean, we all know that. You need something that's consistent and a cohesive representation of where you're going right now. And then it takes time to look and also discern from other people and your own exposure, and then asking people, you know, ask your group of colleagues, ask whatever forum you have, whether you come out of art school, you're used to having critique groups, have any critique groups, you know, try to decide what is a feasible place for you to enter the market. You know, what seems like a feasible place. And you know, I think some of these things you get a feel for, and then every once in a while, just like a story that I've told before of somebody that I met on a train from Amsterdam going back to Paris, I saw 3 things on an iPhone, and I picked up my phone and called a dealer that I knew was in Venice right then, going to the Venice Biennale. And I got her on the phone and said, you know, I just saw somebody who is an absolute genius. This guy's fantastic. This is really fantastic work. I had not even seen the work. I had seen images on an iPhone. And it was just so phenomenal. And lo and behold, yeah, the work is great. The work is distinctive. And, you know, I think you sort of know, you'll get a feel for that. Do you want to approach a gallery when you've got 15 pieces or 18 pieces? I don't think you should say, well, I've got to wait until I've got 24 really good, strong things. You know, I hate to throw out a number because it's so arbitrary. And the reality is, if you've been making art all your life and you have a good, strong body of what you're doing now or what you've done in the last couple of years, within that, if you show it to somebody who's got a good eye, they're going to know immediately, you know, yes or no. They're going to know immediately if it's a match because, you know, that's what they do, and that's where I sometimes see the work of emerging artists, and I think, oh, that would be a good match at this gallery. That would be a good match at that gallery. But that's just my gut reaction. It doesn't mean that that's what the gallerists would really accept if they were looking at your portfolio. But be very professional about how you introduce your portfolio, make an appointment, make a contact. I think it's one person who is a painter, and this painter really was a friend of mine. I mean, I should say is a friend of mine. I know this person. But a specific painter cold called a gallery owner who is a very good friend of mine. And, you know, the gallery owner was so nonplussed by the whole situation, but, you know, didn't even look at the work. Didn't even look at the work because they felt blindsided, and they should have. You know, you've got to be respectful of their time and respectful of what they're giving you in terms of their very professional perspective. And if you know somebody who is a dealer, but they're not accepting anybody, ask them, would you be willing, to look at my work and make a suggestion? Do you know the art dealer who just passed away? Was it just last week or a week and a half ago, Hudson?
Yep.
Hudson used to look at people's portfolios and send things like handwritten notes. You know, thank you for showing me the work, but I'd like to see it later. And I believe, if I'm not getting my numbers wrong, because sometimes I get excited about ideas and I get the numbers confused, but I believe there was a particular artist that he ultimately did give a gallery show that he had first been contacted by 9 years prior. And Hudson had said to the artist, let me know what you're doing. If the gallery person says to you, I really don't think so, I don't think that's a match, I think we're going to translate that into he's just not that into you, right? And if the gallery owner says, you know, this is really interesting, but I don't have a space right now, you know, let's kind of keep in touch and see what. That's about as open a door as you can get, unless you get the kind of reaction that I gave an absolute stranger on the train. You are a genius. I'm going to give you all the money I have right now. Go buy as many pencils as you can. Don't stop working. You must do this, you know. And that's the kind of thing that we need to be willing to do for each other. You know, critique each other's work, make suggestions. You know, it's no different than saying, you should eat at Joe's, or you really should see 12 Years a Slave. It's a really hard and difficult movie, but it's so beautiful you shouldn't pass up on it. You really should see that movie. We go through life making suggestions all the time. We shouldn't be so precious and closed off about our art. Bless you. That's what we have to overcome. You know, we have to overcome that sense of it's too difficult, you know. We have to overcome that sense and go ahead and have a sense of sharing and openness and possibility for something to happen and go to the next potential position. I think so. I think that's where things happen. In the realm of possibility is where things happen.
Dana, I think that's unfortunately a good place to wrap this up.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe next time we should give you the full 2 hours. I don't know. You have an awful lot of good material, you know, and a lot that you contribute and a lot to say. You're genuinely appreciated throughout the art world, and you're very appreciated by this group. You know, Dana, thank you.
Well, and I want to say to the artists, don't be discouraged. You do right now at this time. You are sometimes surrounded by a world that doesn't quite remember how important art is. But once art is in your life, it's in your life forever. And I think that we just have to keep going and get more creative about how to make those next steps and introductions.
Fabulous, Dana. Thank you so much. I've unmuted everybody. Dana, thank you.
Thank you.
Dana.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.